Hey everyone, welcome to day 5. And we made it. We made it down to the fifth tip, the fifth and final tip that has helped me to create a solid foundation for wellness and avoid complete burnout. And this last tip, I'll be honest, is basically a combination of the previous four. If you're doing and really activating the previous four tips, this tip should work naturally almost by default. And I will say, outside of that, it should also be something that will start to come naturally because the four things you've done prior to this will lead you to having no excuse in this final area. And that final area is being disciplined enough to leave work on time or at the very least at a reasonable time. Now, of course, I add that caveat at the end because, for those of us who may work in, let's say, 24-hour operations, there are obviously times where you can't leave exactly on the dot. And that's expected that you're going to work every now and again a few extra hours. But what can sometimes be the norm for engineers, for really anyone who is trying to, let's say, prove themselves or go to the next level, we can sometimes get caught up in spending too much time at work. And like I said, the previous four that we talked about, sleep, eating food first thing in the morning, talking to someone, managing your time, those things don't happen on their own. And they definitely don't just happen if you're not planning and carving out some time in your life to get them done. And so when you do that, if you're getting the good hours of sleep, you actually need time to be home so you can sleep. If you're talking to someone, if you're talking to a therapist that's helping you through your stuff, you got to be able to have a time on the calendar with which you can do so. And so, all of that to say, leaving work on time allows those other things to happen and to happen more easily. So, it's not something that is feeling stressful or feeling extra or feeling like I have to figure out a way to get this done and it doesn't feel workable. So this one honestly is quick because the truth is having the discipline to leave on time really does depend on you figuring out the ways to make the other four work. But it can be really easy, or I'll say it can be simple to do if you get clear on why you need to do it. And I would say the clarity for me came in realizing that in order to live a healthy life, in order to not feel like I'm going stir crazy every day, all the time, I got to set boundaries in my life that allow me to live well. Point blank, period. So that's what I want for you. That's what I want for me. That's what I want for us. I want us to continue to evolve and shift and change and move in such a way that we can live well. And like I said from the very beginning, these 5 things, it's not a all-inclusive list. These are really just the first 5 things that I realize that I do apply on a consistent basis at some level, and it does help me find clarity in that space of wellness. There are definitely other things I could add to the list, and I'm sure you could think of a few things too. But if I had to think of a starting 5, these would be the starting 5. And they definitely do work together to make life just a little bit better. So discipline yourself, work on figuring out what that looks like for you to take back your time, to not be, I heard a coworker one time say that he would be at work and he would just be at work late and he would allow himself to he would lose track of time and he would just be working. And you know what that builds up in you. Yes, you may get things done and you may even feel like you've been productive, but you get home later than you originally planned and it builds up kind of a shadow of resentment because now you're home and you wanted to do other things, or maybe you plan to do other things, but you're home later. And I'll say this for me, what has happened when I've done that, when I've stayed later than I actually needed to. So, meaning like it wasn't something urgent that I needed to be at work for. I was just at work doing stuff because I wanted to get more things done, right? What ended up happening is I came home later than I normally planned to, and I ended up staying up later because I didn't have those extra hour or two that I would have had I gotten home at a reasonable time. And so it then affects my sleep, which then affects what I eat, which then affects the start of my day once I get to work because now I'm running on E. I'm tired. I'm probably not eating the best choice. You know what I mean? It snowballs 100%. So, like I said, with each of these things, you really got to take an account of your life. You really have to take a practical look. And practically, what leaving on time means is understanding that sometimes you will have to stay late, and that's okay. That's completely acceptable. That's fine. But flex. If you stay 2 or 3 hours late one day, maybe you should leave an hour or so earlier the next day. Maybe you should figure out what that looks like later in your week, adjusting that time. Maybe you should connect with your manager, your team creatively to figure out, okay, how am I going to make sure that in the grand scheme, I am not only serving my team and this company well, but I'm serving myself well. Because here's the truth. If something happens to you, where will you be? If you're not well, how well can you serve your team or your company or your job? So you got to always remember that. It's not really even just about the job. Because what I'm most concerned about is you. Okay? But you could make a case for both. So anyway, that's what I have for today. That's what it is. Like I said, simple, not always easy to do. But when you get clear about what's important and why it's important, it does sometimes come a little easier. So that's all I wanted to share. And I will close us out as usual in prayer, that we will continue to be able to find the strength to discipline ourselves. So, dear Lord, I want to thank you for today. I want to thank you for the reminder that discipline is possible and discipline is, in fact, freedom. I want to pray for each and every one of my YouTube friends that is listening now and in the future, that you will help them to be able to find the courage and find the flexibility in their situation to have the discipline to say yes to themselves and their own wellness. God, you have called us to serve and to serve others, but not to the detriment of ourselves. And so I thank you that you are helping us to have power in this area so that we have freedom in our overall lives. Amen.